We're going to talk about natural pest management. Another name for it would be natural integrated pest management. You've heard that term. There's a lot of ways. I can remember when I was a kid, people, they would see a bug and they would get out the strongest, worst chemicals that you could ever think of to spray something that probably didn't even need to be sprayed, but they picked it off by hand to get it. It was just that mentality people had, you know, that you had to do it that way. Now, what we try to do is get people to do whatever is least, not whatever is worst. So if you go with that mindset, a lot of things you can do without ever having to use any pesticide whatsoever. You just don't need to do it. We'll go into that as we talk. I especially like our ladybug beetle here eating the aphids. It's a comforting thought to see that. We'll enjoy that. All right, so definitions and so forth. We're creating a garden environment where creatures that protect plants and help them to grow, outnumber the baddies basically, and control the creatures that eat plants and disturb their growing. And that's from Ed Smith. And by the way, this Vegetable Gardener's Bible, we have it over at the seed store. It is, in my mind, is probably the best book on gardening you'll ever get. If you could only pick one, that would be the one to get. That's the best. Your goal is creating ecologically balanced garden and avoidance of toxic chemicals. And by the way, if you have a question as I'm speaking, interrupt me. Raise your hand and I'll answer your question now. I'd rather do it that way than wait till the end. That way, because it's fresh in your mind, it's fresh in my mind. We'll just rate it that way. Strategy. Now you see, everybody know who that is? Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Okay. He's got his magnifying glass out. That's really, believe it or not, that's a great thing to have as a magnifying glass. You can get a little one that's actually fit in your pocket. And then when you can identify something right there. So you carry one in your pocket if you're out in the garden. It's a great thing to have. Becoming an insect and disease detective. In other words, that is probably the #1 skill that you're going to need. Don't panic. You might see something and say, oh, I think that's a bad creature. I'm just not real sure. Well, there are plenty of publications online. There's books that you can get, magazines you can get that can give you all the information. You know the story got one with good bug, bad bug. You know, that's okay. There's some good things to do out there. First thing we want to do is we want to try and prevent our issues. A preventive method, non-chemical method. Okay. Cultural controls, which includes physical and mechanical constraints, insect trap barriers, lures, hand picking, biological control, beneficial insects and beneficial chemicals, like dipel, Bacillus thuringiensis. I heard you talking about it, using dipel. Last resort chemicals, soaps, oils, and abrasives, which would be like Diatomaceous Earth. It's a good one. And botanical pesticides like neem oil. Bug identification, and that's where it's key. Like if those of you who can use the internet, there are some fabulous sites online. All you got to do is Google in or put in the search engine, bug identification. There's some fabulous sites that will come up, and it'll show you pictures of what they actually look like and what they do. And some people think certain ones are bad and they're actually good ones. And so you really got to know. It's like the snakes. Like, I do snake rescues back in my yard. I like snakes. I don't like the poisonous ones. And I know mostly what we're going to find around here is copperheads. So that one's a real easy one for me to identify, and I know what to do about that critter. Find out if the bug is a problem. In other words, out here in the garden 2 years ago, we had this beetle that was going on all the amaranth bushes that we had, and it was up on the flowers. It was up on the flowers. And I thought it was a bad bug at first. It turned out to be what's called a soldier beetle, and all it was doing was eating the pollen off the flowers. It wasn't hurting anything. It wasn't bothering a soul. But it looked like a blister beetle. So I thought it was a problem, but I did some identification, found out it was fine. Life cycle and biology. We have a fruit fly that's hitting the Missouri area right now. It's called two-spotted Drosophila. There's other fruit flies that only have one generation. It has anywhere from 5 to 8 generations. It goes from a female, lays eggs, those eggs become females again in 10 days. What happens is in blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, any soft fruit, peaches, elderberries, mulberries, it attacks the fruit, little maggots get in the fruit, and it's very unsightly. And how many of you, I don't think any of you here would like to eat maggots. And it's becoming a major problem. So we're coming up with some strategies for that now. And I'm going down these rabbit trails just to give you an example of where we've got to be within our mind so we can keep not just one step ahead, but way ahead of what's out there with good strategies. Beneficial or predatory? How many of you think that the ultimate beneficial insect is a praying mantis? It's not. Praying mantis will eat any other insect. It doesn't care what it is. It'll eat a honeybee, it'll eat a bumblebee, it'll eat a hummingbird, it'll eat fish jumping out of the stream, a little fish.
Wow.
They are amazing creatures, but they don't discriminate whether it's good or bad. So they're a great creature, but they're limited in what they really can do. Disease identification. So you want careful observation to detect potential pathogens. You got to really, really look into these things. How many of you have grown garden peas and then come to find out later in the season, as you were harvesting, there was this white stuff that got on leaves and on the pods? Anybody here ever get that?
I did a couple of years ago, and then I've never done peas since because it was when it's a disaster, you just...
That's called powdery mildew.
Yeah.
And
I
you
found
notice,
that out later.
and you found that it didn't come from too much rain. It didn't. It just showed up one day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I get it sometimes on my roses. I have to be real careful on my roses and my apple trees.
There are some things that you can do preventive so that it won't show up on your pea plants. You could use baking soda or sulfur, because what happens is with a lot of these diseases, once that disease gets into the leaf tissue or the stems, it's done. You're not going to stop it from that point. But if you can prevent it, because that particular disease lives in a very narrow, we call pH range. So if you can make the leaves and the stems more acidic or more basic, baking soda or sulfur, that powdery mildew can't live on that leaf or on that stem. Can't. It's impossible.
So does baking soda actually give you the same results as far as pH level, the acidity level as sulfur does?
No, it's the other end. It's basic.
Oh, okay.
It's the sweet, not instead of the sour, it's the sweet.
Okay. So the sulfur is if you want more acidity, and
Correct.
baking soda is if you do not want, if you need less.
What would be wise strategy would be to alternate between the sulfur and the baking soda, back and forth.
Because we have a problem right now, we sent off soil sample because we're too alkaline, we're 8.0 in our garden this year. Yeah, we put our ash from our furnace in there, and it made it too alkaline. So we're gonna find out exactly how much sulfur we need to put on.
Good. You can get pelleted sulfur, and by the way, it is a natural organic mineral. There's nothing wrong with using it. But again, you can end up with the same problem. You gotta be careful.
Yeah.
Because you put too much of that, it's not like, okay, so I'm at 8.0 and the sulfur's at 3.0, I'll put it on there and put tons of it on there, and the next thing you know, your soil's at 4.5 and you're way too acid.
That's why we sent the soil samples. They're
Yeah.
going to tell us exactly how much we need to put on.
But I'm also going to share some other things with you. We'll get into that. Physiological versus pathological. You can have a leaf of a plant that's showing it's yellow instead of green, it's a yellowish green, or yellow between the veins. And so people say, oh, I got a disease on there. No, you probably have a lack of nitrogen or a lack of other minerals. You have to learn the difference between what's a disease and what's a physiologic problem. In other words, maybe with the pH being right, then the plants can pick up the nitrogen, the magnesium, the manganese, the copper, the zinc, boron, and so forth. And that's the difference, okay? When we kill off the natural enemies of the pest, we inherit their work. So, I saw a video, maybe one of you have seen this video. It was in China, and these folks in China, They had a pear orchard, oriental pears, those beautiful oriental, round oriental pears. And they were hand pollinating 40 acres of pear trees.
Yeah.
That's pretty heroic task. Why were they doing that? Because pollution had killed off, not diseases and whatnot, it actually killed off not just honeybees, but all the pollinators were gone from that area. Imagine walking around with bamboo sticks with chicken feathers on it, dipped in pollen, and going from tree to tree and all the flowers. Wow. I thought, what a consequence that is. That's terrible. Physical and mechanical controls, that's insect traps and lures. What you can do, like when I was talking about the two-spotted Drosophila, you can put out these traps that have a smell in it, usually it's some kind of a yeast compound, and they will be attracted to it, or pheromone, which is the sexual hormones of that creature, specific, and they'll be attracted to it. You can check the trap and you can see what's in there. And if you see the two-spotted, you'll see the two spots on the wings of the males, and you'll say, uh-oh, they're here. Now, if you just see one or two, it's not a big deal. But if you see a third of what's in the trap, there's all two spots, you got a problem. And then it's too late. I would start doing natural pest control early, and there are chemicals to use that are considered natural. They're strong, but they do the job. Visual lures. Anybody ever use a yellow sticky card or a yellow card? The yellow sticky card, and then you can also, they get stuck to it, and you can count how many are on the card over however many days. And then when the card gets full of insects, you throw that one away or store it away so that you can keep track of it. And then put a new one up and put a date down when you've done it so you can keep track of what your problems are. Sometimes the shape of the trap. Some people like to use triangular ones instead of square ones. Some people would like to cut circles. Whatever works in your area. And it could be different in every area where all of you live. You just have to be a detective and figure out which one's the best. Sticky traps, I was telling you about the yellow sticky traps. Monitor and control pest populations and inhibit reproduction. If they're stuck to that sticky card, they can't breed. They just can't breed. That's the end of them. Now, we talked about easy way, instead of grabbing the bug spray and the sprayer and the bug spray, why would you do that? What if you just had one branch of a bush that was covered with insects? Grab a hand pruner, prune it off, throw it in the garbage. It just solves your problem. Or if you got some aphids on there, you can just take a water spray hose with an end on it that sprays and knock the bugs right off of there. Once an aphid is knocked off the plant, it's not going back on the plant. It's done. That's the way they are. They're not going to crawl back up. They're just not going to do it. Nope. That's the end of them. Once you knock them off, that's the end of it. Okay? Or you can hand pick them up. That's my favorite. We're going to be talking about that. Where people love to go out there and squash those squash bugs. Hand pick them off of there. I'm going to teach you a way you won't have to do that ever again. You got barriers. You can use tanglefoot, which is like a sticky substance. You can paint it on the trunk of a tree. It gets stuck on the sticky substance, and they just won't go up that. They don't like it. Insects don't like it. They don't think like we do, but they don't like sticky. Yes.
I hate to interrupt you, but I had a question.
Sure.
You're saying once they're knocked off the plant, they're done, right?
Right.
Does that work with a potato beetle?
No, because they can fly. Well, it depends. It depends. Okay, that's a good question. Potato beetles are what we call incomplete metamorphosis. So what that means is they go from an egg to a nymph, a small one. They cannot fly. So all it can do is crawl. It can't fly. Only the adults can fly. So it has to go through several, what we call instars, to finally become an adult that can fly. So maybe when they're small, if you jetted them enough, and jetted them away from the plants far enough, they probably wouldn't come back. They would be confused. Again, they're opportunistic. Adult potato beetle lays eggs on a certain plant. So usually they're opportunistic. They're going to attack what they're attached to at the moment. That could work.
Thank you.
That could work. The other one is Diatomaceous Earth. Anybody know what Diatomaceous Earth is? Maybe you don't. You don't? We'll explain it right now. Okay. Diatomaceous Earth, there's one grade of it they use in pool filters. Okay? That's not the variety you use. The variety you use is what they call freshwater diatomaceous earth. You can buy it. Even MFA, which sells chemicals like crazy, they even sell DE, diatomaceous earth. And what it is, it's the bodies of, it's the skeletons of microscopic animals called diatoms. And if you look at it under a microscope, it looks like little shards of glass, even though they were creatures, freshwater creatures. And when the insects cross them, it cuts their bodies. If the dust touches them, or if it gets into their breathing holes, which are called spiracles, it can kill them. It desiccates them. All the body fluids come out of the insect and they just die. It's slow. My wife uses DE around the house where the ants are. They'll come in, those black ants that come into your house from time to time. Once they hit DE, they don't like DE at all. They hate it. They will stay away from it. Slugs and snails will stay away from diatomaceous earth. They don't like it. They can't stand it. It's a good method to use. All right, here's that sticky trap I was telling you about. These are all fruit flies, by the way. You can tell. A little red, that's for sure. This is triangular in shape. Fits nice in there, and there's probably a lure in there of some sort. And then they fall down inside this little reservoir, and you can count the population. Same thing here. This could be a Japanese beetle trap, and it probably is. They love the color yellow, and they fall in down here. They can't get back out. So again, you can count how many you are. We went to a place up near Jeff City where they had Japanese beetle problems on their blueberries, and they put out several of these kind of traps. But they had instead of this, they had these long bags on it, plastic bags. And we were there. The bags were full of dead Japanese beetles. They estimated from 14 traps that they had out, and dumping them and putting new bags and dumping and putting, that they trapped over 1 million Japanese beetles. Now some people say the trap is the problem because the Japanese beetle sees it, likes it, and says, oh, that looks good to me. But eventually what happens is the population dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped to where they just don't even have a problem anymore. And Japanese beetles can be terrible. They can really chew up a crop in a hurry. Cultural control, crop rotation. How many of you have gardens and plant the tomatoes in the same spot every year? Don't be bashful. Wrong. They shouldn't be back in the same spot, but every 4th year.
Oh, wow.
So every 4, you can plant 4
So in other words,
years,
you plant your tomatoes here,
and then another spot the next
and
year?
then next year you plant them here, and then the next year you plant them over
Oh,
here,
so I'm moving them
and then on the
every
4th year you can go back over
year.
here.
Oh, wow.
If you're not doing that, you're building up disease in your soil, in your surroundings. The disease is going to be there, and that's why you're having problems with disease. You probably have had, late blight, early blight, something.
No, I'm not been here very long.
Okay, but change your method. Change it.
So how far away, like if you plant in one area, how many feet away should you?
Well, I'd be at
plant
least 25, 30 feet away.
from the original spot?
At least.
Okay.
Now, some of you are going to say, I only have a small garden plot. Put them in pots. Put them out front. Put them on the side of the house. Move them away. Get them away.
Okay.
Just change your method. That's number one. Crop rotation is key. Okay? Because you get better fertility too. Because if you keep planting tomatoes in the same spot, it's pulling the same nutrient out all the time. So the tomato plant's going to start getting weaker and weaker. You can even put fertilizer in there, but it won't be enough because tomatoes have specific needs. That's the same family as pepper, eggplant, potato, petunias. How many of you like to grow petunias? Same family. That's the same family. Okay. Proper spacing. Allow plants to reach full potential and vitality. Don't crowd them in. Say, oh, I got this extra little spot. I just saw it. There's a little spot right there, so I'm going to plant. No, don't do that. You plant a cabbage plant in a square-foot garden. We tried the Mel Bartholomew square-foot gardening method. One broccoli plant took the 4x4. One cabbage plant took the 4x4. I mean, it was huge. The cabbage was, remember how big it was? Huge. We got a gorgeous cabbage. If I had put 4 plants in there like it said to do, I'd have had these little bitty cabbages. I don't want that, I want the full potential. So, you know, so if you got even a raised bed system, plant those broccoli plants at least 18 inches apart, maybe even 2 feet apart. They will almost be touching, I guarantee you they will. They'll grow that, give them the potential that they need. Because that crowding causes stress to the plant. Then the plant sends out a biochemical signal to the insect. We can't see it, they can, and it says attack. And it will. And disease will be another problem. That'll be another problem. Overcrowding may cause disease and signal insects to attack potentially weaker plants, that we're talking about. Sanitation. And by the way, I'm a big offender of this, and I shouldn't be. So it's like, and it's, this year I vow to make sure that I get rid of plants when they are starting to disease, and I see it, pull them out, either burn them right away or put them in a garbage bag and throw them away. That's the only solution, organically or naturally. There is not another solution. There really isn't. Don't say, oh, I got this fungicide. No, it's too late by then. Once it's in the tissue of the plant, it's too late.
I thought that like vermiculture and that kind of stuff got through a bunch of pathogens and all that kind of stuff too.
What's that? I'm sorry?
Vermiculture, like worms, if you stick them through a worm bin.
That's different. But I still wouldn't use that disease material for vermiculture.
Okay.
I'd be that cautious. It's just not worth it. It really, I don't think I'd do that.
Okay.
Properly clean garden tools to prevent disease. Last year, how many of you had apple tree? I mean, anybody have apple trees or pear trees? Did you ever notice those burnt branches that were on your trees last year? Did you get them? You live around here?
Yeah, I don't know what they look like, I guess.
Well, you noticed it. It looked like someone took a torch to the end of the
Yeah,
branch.
I lost my last apple last year, I had to plant new ones.
All right, do you know what that disease is called? That's fire blight. So, when you see it early, you take a pair of pruners, and in your other pocket, this is the quick way, in your other pocket, put a small can of Lysol. I'm serious, Lysol. Make a cut, spray the blades. Make a cut, spray the blades. Make a cut, spray the blades.
Disinfects the blades.
Otherwise, you're going to be spreading that bacteria all throughout your tree. Don't make a cut after cut after cut, and then clean your tools afterward. On that one, you got to clean it every cut. There's no shortcut to this. That's the other thing I want to share. There's no shortcuts. Remove debris and affected plant material. So either burn it, and I have this thing called a Red Dragon, propane tank, and it puts out 500,000 BTUs of heat, and I'm telling you what, I can burn up a plant real quick. Yeah. Make sure all plantings are in full sun. That's another problem with powdery mildew. If there's any shade on those plants, you get powdery mildew. It's going to hit. And the other one's called downy mildew. On the leaves, you'll start seeing these splotches of yellow, and then eventually brown.
I see somebody was telling me that was from we had a big cedar tree right next to our garden, and someone was telling me it was called cedar rust, but.
Okay, the cedar apple gall rust is different than the fire blight. Cedar apple gall rust, you'll turn the back of the leaf over, and there'll be these orange, powdery circles on the back of the leaves, and that's the rust.
Oh, that's
And once they get it,
different.
they got it. That actually got into the leaf itself and then worked its way out. And by then, it's too late.
But that's not what it looked like, so
No,
they
no.
were wrong then, what they were thinking it was.
You'll see, it looks like the ends of the branches are just burnt. You'll see a little baby branch just
Yeah.
burnt. That's fire blight. So you gotta cut back to
That's
good
what the
tissue.
apple was, yeah.
Cut back to good tissue where it's nice and clean. Spray. Your tool is important. Make sure all planting, and then soil preparation and maintenance. I have some spots in my garden where there's too much water. So I do raised bed gardening. Make their beds taller. If they're 6 inches tall and 2/3 of the bed are in water, that's kind of silly. Make the beds 12 inches tall, 18 inches tall if you have to. And then just leave it like that. That way, it may be water down at the bottom, but at least you got some air in the soil. You have to have pores of air in the soil for the roots to grow properly. You gotta have that porosity. If you don't, you end up with problems. The roots start to rot on you. You don't want that. That's just as bad.